The dim glow of neon signs flickered across the worn wooden bar, casting long shadows over the crowded room like ghosts from forgotten roads. Laughter and the clink of beer bottles filled the air, thick with the scent of leather jackets and engine grease, as the Steel Ravens Motorcycle Club celebrated another year of brotherhood under the desert sky. Victor Ash Moreno leaned against the scarred oak counter, his calloused fingers tracing the edge of a half-empty glass. At 41, he carried the weight of the miles in his weathered face, deep lines etched from years of sun-baked highways and nights haunted by what-ifs. His black vest, patched with the Raven emblem, hung loose over a frame hardened by endless rides, but tonight the usual fire in his eyes was subdued, lost in the haze of old memories. It started with a child's voice, small and piercing, cutting through the rumble like a spark in dry tinder. 8-year-old Mia Alvarez stood on a stool at the far end of the bar, her dark curls bouncing as she reached for a bowl of pretzels. Her adoptive mother, Elena, a quiet woman in her 30s with tired eyes and a faded floral dress, chatted nearby with a group of locals, oblivious at first. Mia's finger shot out, pointing straight at Ash's forearm, where the ink swirled in intricate detail. A portrait of a baby girl, wide-eyed and innocent, framed by thorny roses that seemed to bleed into his skin. "Why is my picture tattooed on your arm?" she asked, her voice innocent but laced with confusion, the words hanging in the air like smoke from a backfired exhaust. The bar fell completely silent. Conversations died mid-sentence, bottles paused halfway to lips, and even the jukebox skipped a beat, its country twang fading into an awkward hum. Eyes turned, hardened bikers, weathered barflies, and Elena herself, locking onto the scene as if time had slammed on the brakes. Ash froze, his glass slipping from his grip to clatter softly against the wood. The tattoo, inked 2 decades ago in a dimly lit parlor off Route 66, stared back at him, the face of his infant daughter Sophia captured forever in faded blues and greys. She'd vanished from her crib one stormy night, snatched in the dead of winter, leaving only a crumpled blanket and a father's shattered promise to protect her. He'd ridden every dusty trail, chased every lead through back-alley deals and whispered rumors, but the trail had gone cold years ago. Until now. Mia's wide brown eyes mirrored the tattoo's gaze, her small hand still extended, trembling slightly. She tilted her head, a frown creasing her forehead. "That's me, from my old school picture. Mommy keeps it in her wallet." Elena's face drained of color, her hand flying to her mouth as she pushed through the crowd, the stool toppling behind her with a scrape that echoed like a warning. The Steel Ravens, 50 strong, brothers forged in the fires of lost wars and shared scars, shifted uneasily, their loyalty to Ash a silent wall around him. Jax, the club's grizzled president with a salt-and-pepper beard and a prosthetic leg from some forgotten battlefield, placed a heavy hand on Ash's shoulder, his voice a low growl. "Easy, brother. Let's hear the girl out." Ash slid off his stool, kneeling to Mia's level, the creak of his leather pants the only sound in the frozen room. Up close, the resemblance hit like a punch to the gut, the same button nose, the faint dimple in her cheek. His heart pounded, a thunder rivaling the club's roaring Harleys outside. "What's your name, kid?" he asked, his voice rough but gentle, like gravel under tires. "Mia," she said, glancing at Elena, who now hovered protectively, her arms wrapping around the girl's waist. "Mia Alvarez, but why do you have my face? Did you draw it?" Elena stammered, her eyes darting between Ash and the tattoo. "Mia, honey, that's not... It can't be. We got you from the agency, legal papers and everything." But doubt crept into her words, her grip tightening as fragments of buried truth surfaced. She'd always wondered about the gaps in Mia's story, the hasty adoption, The sealed records from a shady lawyer in a border town. The agency had promised a fresh start after her own life crumbled, but now, staring at Ash's arm, the pieces felt wrong, jagged. Ash's mind raced back to that nightmarish dawn 20 years prior. He'd been a younger man then, fresh from the service, promising Sophia's mother, gone too soon from illness, that he'd keep their girl safe. The break-in had left no traces, just whispers of an underground ring, peddling babies like spare parts across state lines. He'd inked the tattoo as a vow, a map etched into his flesh, vowing to the club and himself that he'd never stop searching. The Steel Ravens had become his anchor, a family chosen through oaths sworn over campfires and chrome, their rides turning into hunts for justice in a world that chewed up the innocent. Now, in this dusty bar on the edge of nowhere, fate had rolled up like an uninvited convoy. Ash extended his arm fully, letting the light catch the details, the tiny birthmark above the baby's lip, identical to the one on Mia's face. "This was my daughter," he said, his voice steady despite the storm inside. "Sophia, taken when she was just a few months old. If you're saying this looks like you, then maybe, kid, we've both been carrying the same ghost." The room exhaled collectively, murmurs rippling like wind through canyons. Jax nodded to his men, who formed a loose circle, their presence a shield against whatever shadows this revelation might unleash. Elena sank onto a stool, pulling Mia close. Her whispers frantic. It was supposed to be clean. They said no one would ever know. Tears welled in her eyes, not just fear, but a dawning guilt for the life she'd built on borrowed foundations. Outside, the desert wind howled, carrying the faint rumble of idling engines, as if the night itself sensed the turning point. Ash stood slowly, his gaze locked on Mia's, a silent promise forming in the space between them. This wasn't just a coincidence, it was the spark that could ignite a reckoning, dismantling the hidden networks that preyed on the vulnerable. For Ash, it meant facing the pain he'd buried under miles of asphalt. But for Mia, it promised a truth long denied, a chance to bridge the chasm of lost years with the quiet strength of those who honored their word. As the bar's silence stretched, broken only by Mia's soft breathing, Ash knew the road ahead would test every scar, every vow. The Steel Ravens would ride with him, their loyalty the unyielding chain binding past to present. And in that moment, with a child's question hanging like dawn's first light, the journey toward redemption began, not with thunder, but with the steady beat of a father's unbroken heart. If you're watching this, drop a comment below. Where in the world are you tuning in from? And what time is it there right now? These stories of hidden truths and found families travel far. Let's see how they reach you. The desert night pressed against the bar's grimy windows, stars pricking the velvet sky like distant campfires. Inside, the air hung heavy with unspoken questions, the scent of spilled whiskey mingling with the faint, acrid tang of fear. Ash remained kneeling, his knees grinding into the splintered floorboards, eyes level with Mia's. The girl's small chest rose and fell in shallow breaths, her fingers twisting the hem of her sundress as if anchoring herself to the moment. Elena clutched her tighter, a mother's instinct warring with the unraveling of her world, her whispers lost in the hush that had claimed the room. Jax cleared his throat, the sound like gravel shifting under boots, breaking the spell just enough to let the Steel Ravens stir. "All right, folks," he rumbled, his voice carrying the authority of a man who'd stared down worse storms than this. "Give 'em space, bars closing early tonight." The bikers moved like shadows, their heavy steps echoing as they herded patrons toward the door, leather creaking, murmurs low and urgent. One by one the neon lights dimmed, leaving only a single bulb over the counter, casting a warm, amber glow on the faces at its center. Ash swallowed hard, the lump in his throat tasting of dust and regret. Mia, he said softly, the name feeling foreign yet achingly right on his tongue. Can you tell me more about that picture? The one your mom keeps. He glanced at Eleanor, not with accusation, but with the quiet plea of a man piecing together a shattered mosaic. She met his gaze, her eyes red-rimmed, the lines around them deepening like cracks in parched earth. Eleanor hesitated, then nodded, guiding Mia onto a stool and sliding in beside her. The wood groaned under their weight, a reminder of foundations tested. It was from when she was little, Eleanor began, her voice barely above a whisper, laced with the cadence of someone reciting a half-forgotten prayer. The agency gave us that photo, said it was from her first checkup. We named her Mia because it meant mine. I thought she was ours, truly. After my husband left, after the accident that took my sister, I needed something to hold on to. The papers looked official enough, stamped, signed, but there were always questions I pushed away. Why no birth records? Why the rush? Mia's brow furrowed, her innocence a shield, cracking under the weight. Mommy said I came from a place far away, like a gift. She reached out tentatively, tracing the tattoo's edge with a fingertip, the touch sending a shiver through Ash, like wind over hot sand. The ink, faded but unyielding, held the curve of Sophia's cheek, the spark in her eyes, a snapshot stolen from a life that never was. Ash's mind flashed to the tattoo parlor, the buzz of the needle, a relentless drone matching his grief that long-ago night. He'd sat under flickering fluorescence, the artist's steady hands etching his vow into flesh. To find her, to honor the promise whispered over Sophia's cradle. I'll bring you home, he'd sworn to the empty nursery, the words binding him to the ravens like chains of chrome and fire. The club had rallied then, their rides cutting through fog-shrouded towns, chasing shadows of brokers who traded in stolen futures. But leads evaporated like morning mist, leaving only the roar of engines and the ache of miles untraveled. Now that vow stirred anew, pulling him from the past's grip. Elena, Ash said, rising slowly, his joints protesting like an old bike suspension. What agency? Names, places, anything you remember? His tone was steady, forged in the quiet resolve of a man who'd learned justice came not from fists, but from truths unearthed with care. She bit her lip, glancing at the door where Jack stood sentinel, his arms crossed like crossed pistons. The president's nod was subtle, a silent oath of protection. It was called Horizon Placements, Elena murmured, out of a small office in Eldridge near the border. The lawyer, Mr. Harlan, I think, handled it all, said the mother couldn't keep her, that it was for the best. We paid what we could, but it felt off. No visits, no updates, just Mia and a story we told ourselves to sleep at night. Ah, the name landed like a spark on dry grass. Ash's eyes narrowed, recognition flickering. Eldridge, a dusty crossroads he'd scouted years back, where whispers of underground deals lingered like exhaust fumes. The Ravens had poked around there once, turning up leads on a network that funneled the vulnerable through fake adoptions, pocketing fortunes while families fractured. It had gone quiet after a raid spooked the operators, but roots like that ran deep, tangled in corruption that mocked the law's blindfold. Jack stepped forward, his prosthetic leg thudding softly. I've heard of Horizon, slippery bunch, ties to bigger fish, maybe even badges on the take. He clapped Ash on the back, the gesture a bridge of shared burdens. We'll dig, brother, quiet-like, no storms yet. The club was more than bikes and badges. It was a covenant, brothers bound by scars from sands overseas and streets at home, choosing loyalty over blood. Mia yawned, the tension ebbing into her small frame, but her eyes stayed sharp, questioning. Are you my real daddy? She asked, the words slicing cleaner than any blade. Ash knelt again, the floor's chill seeping through his jeans. I don't know for sure, kid, but if there's truth in this ink, in your face, I'll ride to the ends of the earth to find out. And whatever comes, you're safe with us." His hand hovered near hers, not touching, but close enough to promise shelter. Elena wiped her eyes, a fragile resolve hardening. "If this is real, I won't stand in the way. But Mia's my world. We've built something here." Her voice cracked, the admission a step toward the light, away from the shadows of deception. Outside, engines coughed to life, the ravens forming a perimeter under the moon's pale watch. The wind carried the scent of sage and impending rain, a cleansing force on the horizon. Ash stood, the weight of possibility settling like a full tank. This revelation wasn't an end, but a fork in the road, leading to reckonings with hidden traffickers, ethical knots with authorities who'd turned blind eyes, and the slow mending of a family forged in loss. As the bar emptied into the night, the group's quiet exodus felt like the first rev of a long journey. Ash glanced back at Mia, her silhouette framed by the door, a beacon in the dark. The promise etched on his arm burned anew, not with pain, but purpose, a father's honor, unbreakable, guiding them toward dawn. And now I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The first light of dawn crept over the horizon like a hesitant scout, painting the desert in strokes of pale gold and shadow. The Steel Raven's convoy rumbled out from the bar's gravel lot, a phalanx of chrome and thunder cutting through the chill morning air. Ash rode point on his battered black Harley, the engine's growl a steady pulse matching the storm in his chest. Mia clung to Elena in the sidecar of an old club rig, her small form bundled in a borrowed jacket that swallowed her whole, the scent of leather and faint exhaust wrapping around them like a makeshift armor. Jax brought up the rear, his eyes scanning the rear view for tails that might slink from the underbrush of this unraveling truth. They'd chosen a safe house on the outskirts of Eldridge, a weathered ranch house tucked into a canyon fold, far from prying eyes and the hum of official channels. The Ravens owned it outright. No papers, just the quiet claim of those who'd earned their ground through sweat and silence. As the bikes pulled up, dust swirling in lazy eddies, Ash killed his engine first, the sudden quiet amplifying the distant call of a coyote. He dismounted with a stiffness born of the night's vigil, his boots crunching on parched earth as he helped Elena and Mia down. The girl's eyes, heavy with the weight of half-understood wonders, darted between the looming figures of the bikers who moved with the coordinated grace of a pack sensing prey. Inside, the air was cool and still, laced with the faint aroma of aged wood and sun-baked adobe. Jax flipped on a single lamp, its bulb casting a soft halo over a scarred oak table where maps and faded photos lay scattered like relics from old hunts. Elena settled Mia on a threadbare couch, tucking a blanket around her as the child yawned, eyelids fluttering toward sleep. "Rest now, mi amor," Elena murmured, her voice a fragile thread in the room's hush. But Mia's hand found Ash's tattoo again, peeking from his rolled sleeve, her touch a question that lingered even as slumber claimed her. Ash pulled up a chair, the wood creaking under his frame, and met Elena's gaze across the table. Her face, etched with the lines of a life pieced from fragments, held a mix of defiance and dawning vulnerability. "We need to talk straight," he said, his words measured like laying out cards in a high-stakes game. "Horizon placements. Tell me everything, every name, every face you can pull from the fog." She nodded, rubbing her arms as if chasing away a chill that went bone deep. The story spilled out in fits and starts, illuminated by the lamp's glow. The initial call from a friend in a border clinic. Whispers of a discreet service for those who'd lost their way. Harlan, the lawyer, had met them in a nondescript office, his suit too crisp for the dusty town, handing over Mia as if she were a parcel from afar. No tears, no goodbyes, just a folder of stamped documents and a fee that drained their savings. "He mentioned a network," Elena added, her voice dropping. "Said it connected families across lines, but it felt more like a shadow than a bridge. After that, we moved around, jobs here, there. I homeschooled her to keep things quiet." Jax leaned against the wall, his prosthetic leg a silent sentinel, arms folded like crossed rifles. He'd already dispatched a couple of brothers to scout Eldridge under the guise of a routine ride, their comms crackling faintly from his pocket radio. "Sounds like the same web we sniffed out years back," he grunted, his beard twitching with restrained fury. "Fake agencies laundering kids through shell companies. Ties to low-level officials who look the other way for a cut. We busted a corner of it once, saved a boy from a warehouse trap, but the head stayed buried." Ash's fingers drummed the table, the rhythm echoing the tattoo's thorny frame, a reminder of promises etched in pain. He'd lost count of the dead ends, informants vanishing into the night, records sealed by judges with greased palms. But this, Mia, with her matching mark and unyielding gaze, ignited a fire he'd banked low for too long. "We start with Harlan," he decided, his voice a low rev. "Find him, squeeze the truth without the storm. The club's got eyes in every dive from here to the coast." Elena glanced at the sleeping Mia, her expression fracturing like glass under pressure. "What if it's true? What if I took her from you?" The question hung, heavy with the moral weight of unintended theft, her hands trembling as she clasped them. Ash reached across, not touching, but close enough to bridge the gap. "You raised her, gave her a name, a home. That's no small thing in this mess. Truth doesn't erase that, it builds on it." Outside, the scouts' bikes returned sooner than expected, their engines cutting sharp as they pulled into the yard. Tommy, a wiry vet with a scar snaking his neck from some overseas skirmish, burst through the door, his face flushed under the dawn's strengthening light. "Hit pay dirt, Ash. Harlan's office is a ghost, boarded up, but the neighbor talked. Said he skipped town months back after some heat from the feds. But get this, left behind a box of files in a storage unit. We persuaded the lock." He slid a manila envelope across the table, its edges frayed like the edges of secrets. Ash flipped it open, photos spilling out. Grainy shots of infants, coded ledgers listing placements that traced a web from border crossings to inland safe houses. One entry caught his eye. A baby girl noted as Sophia M., acquired via drop-off, reassigned to Alvarez family. The date matched, the details are punched to the ribs. Elena gasped, leaning in, her finger tracing the faded ink. "That's her chart. The one from the clinic." The room tightened, the air thickening with the scent of revelation and risk. Jax's radio buzzed again, a tip from a contact in the next town over. Harlan wasn't gone. He'd surfaced in a roadside motel, holing up with a laptop and nerves frayed thin. But whispers followed, local badges circling, perhaps tipped by the network's deeper roots. Ready to bury the trail under layers of procedure, Ash stood, the chair scraping back like a challenge issued. "We ride at first light, quiet, clean, get Harlan talking, unravel the chain." His eyes flicked to Mia, peaceful in sleep, a fragile anchor in the gathering storm. The ravens nodded as one, their loyalty a silent engine propelling them forward. This wasn't vengeance. It was justice carved from conscience, a stand against the corruption that preyed on the lost. Elena rose too, her resolve steeling like rebar in concrete. "I'm coming. For her sake, for all of us." The group moved to prepare, the house humming with purpose. Maps unrolled, gear checked, the faint clink of keys and holsters a soundtrack to the unfolding path. As the sun crested fully, bathing the canyon in warm light, Ash stepped onto the porch, the desert breeze carrying hints of creosote and promise. The road ahead twisted through ethical shadows, confronting not just Harlan, but the institutional blind spots that let such darkness thrive. Yet in the quiet before the ride, with Mia's soft breaths echoing from within, Ash felt the weight lift, just a fraction. The tattoo on his arm, once a mark of loss, now pulsed with possibility, a father's vow, alive and roaring toward reunion. The convoy assembled under the rising orb, engines idling like hearts poised for the beat. Jax clapped Ash's shoulder, the gesture sealing their chosen bond. For the girl, for the word we gave. And with that they rolled out, dust trailing like a banner of unyielding honor, chasing the dawn of truths long buried. The sun climbed higher, turning the canyon's red walls into blazing sentinels as the Steel Raven's convoy sliced through the sparse scrubland. Ash led the pack, his Harley humming beneath him like a loyal hound, the vibration traveling up his arms to where the tattoo lay hidden under his sleeve, a constant thorny reminder. The air whipped past, and carrying the sharp bite of sagebrush and sun-warmed asphalt, mingling with the low roar of engines that spoke of unity forged in motion. Elena rode pillion behind Jax, her arms locked around his waist, Mia secured in a custom seat with straps that held her steady, her curls fluttering like flags of innocence in the wind. The girl's wide eyes soaked in the landscape, a mix of awe and uncertainty, as if the desert itself whispered secrets she was only beginning to hear. They crested a rise overlooking Eldridge, the town sprawling below like a forgotten outpost. Low-slung buildings baked to ochre, a single main drag flanked by dusty lots and the occasional flicker of a motel sign. Jax's radio crackled with updates from the scouts. Harlan was holed up in room 12 of the Desert Rose Inn, a sagging relic with peeling paint and a vacancy light that buzzed like a trapped insect. No visible security, but the contact warned of badgers sniffing around, their cruisers parked just out of sight at the edge of town. "Play it smart," Jax had growled before they split off. "We want words, not war." Ash signaled the pull-off, the convoy banking into a hidden arroyo a half-mile out, engines cutting to a murmur as they dismounted. Boots hit gravel with muffled thuds, the group forming a tight circle under the sparse shade of a Joshua tree, its twisted limbs clawing at the sky. Tommy handed out earpieces, small and sleek, relics from club runs that demanded discretion. "Two teams," Ash said, his voice low and edged with the gravel of resolve. "Jax, Elena, and me approach on foot. Rest hold the perimeter, eyes on the roads in and out." Nods rippled through the brothers, their vests emblazoned with the raven's fierce silhouette, a symbol of vigilance that transcended bloodlines. Eleanor adjusted Mia's helmet, her hands steady despite the tremor in her chest, the faint scent of her floral perfume cutting through the diesel haze. "Stay close to me, okay? This is just talking to a man who knows things." Mia nodded, clutching a small stuffed raven Jax had given her earlier, its fabric worn from years of passing between club kids. The toy was more than play. It was a talisman of the family they'd stumbled into, one built on quiet oaths rather than accident of birth. They moved out under the midday glare, shadows shortening as they crested the ridge and slipped into town. The streets were eerily still, heat mirages dancing off the pavement like elusive ghosts. The Desert Rose loomed ahead, its neon rose wilted under the sun. Parking lot empty, save for a rusted sedan with out-of-state plates. Ash's pulse quickened, a steady drum matching the distant hum of a patrol car idling blocks away. They approached the row of doors, numbers faded but legible, the air thick with the stale odor of chlorine from an overgrown pool. Room 12's curtains were drawn tight, a sliver of light escaping like a hesitant confession. Ash knocked, 3 sharp raps that echoed off the stucco walls, his frame filling the doorway, a wall of leather and unyielding intent. Footsteps shuffled inside, hesitant. Then the chain rattled, The door cracked open, revealing Harlan, mid-50s, gaunt and slicked-back hair gone to seed, his eyes darting like a cornered animal's. He wore a rumpled shirt, sleeves rolled to reveal a watch that ticked too loudly in the silence. "Who the hell?" Harlan started, but recognition hit, his face paling as he spotted Ash's vest. The Raven's reputation preceded them. Tales of justice delivered on backroads where law faltered. "Moreno, I thought you gave up years ago." Ash didn't budge, his voice a controlled rumble. "Open up, Harlan. We talk inside, or the whole town's about to know your name." Elena stepped forward, Mia peeking from behind her legs, the girl's presence a silent accusation. Harlan's gaze flicked to her, then away, guilt etching deeper lines into his face. With a curse, he unlatched the door, retreating into the dim room where the air hung heavy with cigarette smoke and the faint metallic tang of fear sweat. The space was cramped. A sagging bed, a scarred table piled with papers, and a humming laptop, the screen's glow casting harsh shadows. Jax closed the door softly, his bulk a deterrent against any sudden moves. "Start with the files," Ash said, sliding the manila envelope onto the table, photos fanning out like evidence in a dimly lit courtroom. "Sophia M., placement to Alvarez. You know why we're here." Harlan sank into a chair, rubbing his temples, the weight of buried sins pressing down. It was business, clean on paper. Anonymous donors, grateful recipients. Horizon was just a conduit. But his words faltered under Elena's stare, her arms protective around Mia, who watched with quiet intensity, the stuffed raven clutched like a shield. The ring. It went deeper. Suppliers from the borders, kids moved like cargo. I handled the legal side, made it look right. But after the feds poked around last year, I cut ties. Swear it. "Lies don't wash here," Jax growled, leaning in, his prosthetic leg planted firm. "Names, the ones who took her from me, the badges who buried the reports." The room tensed, the laptop's fan whirring like a rising storm. Harlan's eyes darted to the window, where the patrol car's distant silhouette loomed, a reminder of the corrupted threads binding his world. He exhaled sharply, fingers trembling as he pulled a thumb drive from a drawer. "Everything's here, ledgers, contacts. The head guy's a councilman in the next county, pulls strings with the sheriff's office. They shut down inquiries, called them misfiled. But plugging this in, it'll burn us all." Eleanor's breath caught, the moral chasm yawning before her. The life she'd cherished built on this man's deceptions, yet her love for Mia untainted. Ash took the drive, pocketing it with a nod that sealed an unspoken pact. "You come clean, Harlan. Testify when the time's right, or the Ravens find you again, and next time it's not words." The threat hung, not violent, but laced with the inexorable pull of honor's demand. Harlan nodded, defeated, the air shifting as truth cracked open the room's stale confines. Outside, the patrol car revved closer, tires crunching gravel, a test of the ethical tightrope. Jax signaled the earpiece, scouts reporting movement, badges circling like vultures scenting weakness. "Time to move," Ash said, guiding Elena and Mia toward the door. Mia paused, looking back at Harlan with eyes that pierced the gloom. "Did you know it was wrong?" she asked, her voice small but clear. A child's unfiltered justice. Harlan met her gaze, something breaking in his expression. "Yeah, kid, I knew." The admission echoed, a step toward his own redemption, fragile as desert bloom. They slipped out the back, melting into the alley's shade, the convoy's distant rumble a beacon. As they rejoined the group, engines firing up in unison, Ash felt the drive's weight in his pocket, a key to dismantling the network, but also a mirror to the scars it left. The road twisted ahead, fraught with confrontations against institutional shadows, yet buoyed by the chosen family's quiet strength. Mia's hand found his as they mounted up, a tentative bridge across lost years, her touch whispering of promises kept not in thunder, but in the steady roll toward light. The desert blurred past, the sun dipping toward afternoon's gold, carrying them deeper into the reckoning. For Ash, each mile etched the vow anew. Justice not for vengeance, but for the mending of what corruption had torn. If this chapter stirred something in you, hit that like button. It helps these tales of honor and hidden truths reach more lost roads. The patrol car's siren wailed in the distance, a jagged cry slicing through the afternoon haze as the Steel Raven's convoy accelerated down the cracked highway. Ash gripped the handlebars tighter, the leather gloves creaking under his fingers, the thumb drive a solid weight in his vest pocket like a loaded chamber. Dust devils spun lazily in the rearview, marking their escape from Eldridge, but the echo of Harlan's confession lingered, heavy as the engine's low growl. Mia rode behind Elena on Jax's bike, her small arms wrapped around her adoptive mother's waist. The wind tugging at her curls and carrying the faint, sweet scent of wildflowers crushed under tires. The girl's silence spoke volumes, her questions tucked away for now, but Ash could feel her gaze on his back, a tether pulling him forward through the moral fog. They pushed hard for an hour, the desert unfolding in relentless waves of ochre and sage, until Jax signaled a detour into a forgotten mining road that snaked toward the club's secondary outpost. An abandoned silo compound ringed by chain link and rusted silos standing like silent guardians. The bikes filed in one by one, engines throttling down to a hush as gravel crunched under knobby tires. Ash dismounted first, his boots sinking into the soft earth. The air here cooler, laced with the metallic tang of old iron and distant rain. He helped Mia off, her sneakers scuffing the ground, her hand lingering in his for a beat longer than necessary, warm and trusting in a way that cracked the armor around his heart. Inside the main silo, converted years ago into a makeshift war room, the group gathered around a battered metal table lit by hanging bulbs that swayed gently, casting flickering shadows like memories dancing on walls. Jax spread out the laptop, its screen blooming to life with a soft chime. While Tommy and the others posted watch at the perimeter, their silhouettes sharp against the slanting sun. Elena sat Mia on a crate, padded with a spare jacket. The girl's stuffed raven propped beside her like a sentinel, its button eyes reflecting the glow. "You okay, kiddo?" Ash asked, kneeling to her level, his voice roughened by the ride but softened by the vulnerability in her eyes. Mia nodded slowly, tracing patterns in the dust on the table. That man. He looked scared, like when I have bad dreams. Her words hung, innocent yet piercing, forcing the adults to confront the human cost of the shadows they'd stirred. Elena hovered nearby, her face pale under the bulb's unforgiving light, fingers twisting a loose thread on her dress. The revelation from Harlan's drive had hit her hardest, the ledgers detailing not just placements, but the cold calculus of lives bartered, infants listed as assets, payments routed through shell accounts tied to a councilman named Reyes, a man whose influence stretched like kudzu over local law enforcement. Jax plugged in the thumb drive, files unfolding across the screen in stark columns. Dates, codes, destinations. One folder caught Ash's eye, priority transfers, revealing a map of routes snaking from border safe houses to inland hubs, with Eldridge as a nexus. "Reyes," Jax muttered, his finger jabbing the screen, the prosthetic leg shifting with a faint click. "He's the snake's head, councilman by day, puppet master by night, buries complaints under jurisdictional errors, leans on sheriffs to misfile reports. We've crossed paths with his type before, vets turned away from benefits, families stonewalled on missing kin." Ash leaned in, the scent of heated electronics mingling with the silo's earthy dampness, his mind racing through the ethical minefield. Exposing Reyes meant more than justice. It risked dragging innocents into the crossfire. Overworked clerks coerced into silence, families like Elena's caught in the web without knowing. "We can't just dump this on the feds," he said, his tone measured, like plotting a careful merge onto a rain-slicked road. "They've turned blind eyes before, or worse, fed tips back to the ring. Harlan's word alone won't stick. We need leverage, witnesses, hard proof that ties it to the badges." Eleanor's voice cut through, steady, despite the tremor. "Then use me. I signed those papers, lived the lie without questioning deep enough. If I testify, show how they preyed on desperation." She trailed off, glancing at Mia, who watched with quiet absorption, absorbing the fragments of her fractured origins. The girl's presence grounded them, a living emblem of the stakes, not vengeance but restoration, mending the tears in lives stolen by greed. Tommy burst in from watch, his breath quick, radio clipped to his belt, crackling faintly. "Eyes on the horizon, 2 unmarked sedans, heading this way slow. Could be coincidence, but after Harlan." He let it hang, the implication clear. The network's tendrils reaching out, testing the air for threats. Jax's face hardened, the salt and pepper beard framing a jaw set like forged steel. Perimeter tight. No engagement unless they force it. The brothers moved like a well-oiled machine, slipping into positions with the fluid grace of men who'd faced ambushes in foreign sands and domestic betrayals alike. Ash pulled Elena aside into a shadowed alcove, the silo's curved walls amplifying their whispers, the faint drip of water from a leak punctuating the tension. "This road's getting rougher," he admitted, his eyes searching hers, the tattoo on his arm itching under the fabric as if alive with urgency. "Reyes has could spin this as a club shakedown, bury us in red tape or raids. But backing off now, that dishonors what we've started. For her." He nodded toward Mia, who now doodled on a scrap of paper, sketching a raven with thorny wings, her small tongue peaking in concentration. Elena met his gaze, the weight of shared loss forging an unlikely alliance. "I won't let them silence this. Mia deserves the full picture. Blood or chosen, it's her truth." "Bin." Her words carried the quiet power of redemption, a woman stepping from deception's shadow into the light of accountability. Outside, the sedan's engines hummed closer, dust plumes rising like warnings, forcing a hasty decision. Jax called them back, the screen now displaying encrypted emails from Reyes to Harlan, directives to handle discrepancies quietly, with veiled threats to those who wavered. "Enough to light a fire," Jack said, copying the files to a secure drive. "We ride to neutral ground. A contact in the next state, ex-cop gone private, owes the club from a run we pulled him out of. He can route this to clean channels, bypass the local rot." As the intruders crested the ridge, the Ravens held position, engines cold but ready, a wall of loyalty against the encroaching dusk. Ash scooped Mia up, her weight light on his hip, her head resting against his shoulder as if testing the fit of a long-lost harbor. The sedan slowed, then veered off, perhaps a bluff or a message. They were watched. The convoy reformed under the fading light, stars emerging like hesitant allies, the air cooling with the promise of night rides ahead. They rolled out in formation, the silo's silhouette shrinking behind them, the thumb drive's secrets a beacon cutting through uncertainty. For Ash, each mile deepened the vow etched in his skin, not just to reclaim a daughter, but to dismantle the corruption that had orphaned so many, proving that honor's quiet persistence outlasted the loudest lies. Mia's soft hum from the sidecar blended with the engine's chorus, a fragile harmony amid the gathering storm, pulling them toward the heart of the reckoning where truths would clash and families, chosen and blood, might finally align. The night swallowed the highway whole, stars scattering like embers from a dying fire across the ink-black sky. Ash's Harley led the Steel Raven's convoy, its headlight carving a silver path through the cooling desert air. the engine's steady thrum a counterpoint to the wind's low whistle. Behind him, the bikes stretched in a disciplined line, taillights pulsing red like heartbeats in the dark, carrying the weight of secrets unearthed and promises rekindled. Mia rode in the sidecar attached to Elena's borrowed rig, her small form nestled under a blanket, the stuffed raven tucked against her chest. The girl's eyelids drooped, lulled by the motion, but occasional glances toward Ash spoke of a budding trust, fragile as the first shoots after rain. Elena gripped the handlebars, her knuckles pale against the black leather, the floral scent of her dress now overlaid with the sharp tang of exhaust and sagebrush. Jax flanked her on his own bike, his presence a rolling bulwark, the prosthetic legs steady as they banked through sweeping curves. The thumb drive burned in Ash's pocket, its digital cargo a map to the corruption's core. Reyes and his web of silenced voices, badges twisted into blind alleys. But the road ahead twisted with its own perils. The sedans from the silo might have been a feint, or worse, a signal to the network's deeper veins. Ash's mind churned, replaying Harlan's defeated nod, the moral fracture in a man who'd traded innocence for ledgers. Justice here demanded more than exposure. It required carving a path through the ethical thorns, protecting the vulnerable without becoming the monsters they hunted. They crossed the state line under a sliver of moon, the border marked only by a faded signpost and a shift in the air, cooler laced with the faint brine of distant mountains. The contact's place lay another hour north, a nondescript garage on the edge of a sleepy mill town, owned by Marcus Hale, an ex-cop who'd walked away from the badge after a case gone sour, saved by the Ravens during a midnight extraction from a rigged sting. Hale's loyalty ran deep, forged in the quiet code of those who'd seen the system's underbelly and chosen honor over pension. Ash signaled the slowdown as the town's lights flickered into view. Neon diners and shuttered shops glowing like weary beacons. The convoy pulled into the garage's shadowed lot, engines rumbling to silence one by one, the sudden quiet amplifying the night's subtle chorus. Crickets chirping in the undergrowth, the distant hum of a freight train slicing the dark. Hale emerged from the bay door, a stocky man in his late 50s with a salt-streaked mustache and eyes sharp as honed steel, wiping grease from his hands on a rag. His workshop smelled of oil and solder, tools arrayed on pegboards like instruments of precision surgery. "Moreno," he greeted, clasping Ash's forearm in a grip that spoke of old debts settled. "Heard your rumble from a mile out. What's got the whole pack riding shadows?" Ash dismounted, helping Mia from the sidecar, her sneakers whispering on the concrete as she rubbed sleep from her eyes. Eleanor followed, her steps measured, the weight of impending truths etching deeper lines into her face. Jax hung back, coordinating a loose perimeter with the brothers, their vests catching the garage's fluorescent hum. Inside, under the harsh glare of overhead lights, they gathered around a workbench cluttered with circuit boards and faded case files. Mia perched on a stool, swinging her legs, her gaze flicking between the adults like a bird sensing the shift in wind. "It's bigger than one ride," Ash said, pulling the thumb drive and sliding it across the scarred wood. Hale plugged it into a rugged laptop, the screen flickering to life with columns of data, names, routes, payoffs that traced Reyes's influence like veins in marble. Elena leaned in, her breath catching at entries listing her own placement, the sterile code masking the life it had uprooted. "This ties to a councilman pulling strings on missing kids' cases," Ash continued, his voice low, gravelly with the miles behind it. "Fake adoptions, buried reports. We got a witness ready to flip, but the local law's in his pocket. Need a clean channel, someone who can feed this to feds without the leak." Hale scrolled through the files, his mustache twitching as recognition dawned. "Reyes. Yeah, I've danced around his shadow. Had a partner go quiet after poking too deep into border runs. This is solid. Timestamps, emails that scream racketeering. But exposing him means rattling cages. He'll lawyer up, spin it as club vigilantism, drag in every favor from the governor's office down. He paused, eyes lifting to Mia, who watched silently, her fingers tracing the raven's embroidered wings. The girl's presence humanized the data, turning cold entries into a living plea for integrity. Elena's voice broke the pause, steady but threaded with resolve. Then make it ironclad. I was part of it, unwitting, but I signed the lies. I'll go on record, show how they target the broken widows, vets scraping by. For her, she placed a hand on Mia's shoulder, the touch a bridge across the chasm of unintended harm, her eyes meeting Ash's in a shared vow. The air in the garage thickened, the scent of machine oil mingling with the faint, comforting aroma of cooling engines outside, as Hale nodded, copying the drive to encrypted backups. But tension coiled tighter when Tommy's radio crackled from the lot, a scout's urgent whisper, unmarked tail, 2 cars, hanging back at the junction. They followed us over the line. Jax's silhouette appeared in the doorway, his frame blocking the night like a drawn shutter. We roll light. Ash, Elena, Mia with Hale. Rest draw 'em off on a loop. The plan snapped into place. The club's chosen bonds flexing like suspension on rough terrain. Loyalty, the unbreaking chain. Ash knelt before Mia, the concrete cool against his knee, his tattoo peeking as he rolled his sleeve. Hey, kid, this part's quick. Hale's got stories better than any bedtime. You stick with your mom and him, all right? I'll be right behind. Mia's eyes, mirrors of the ink's gaze, searched his. A flicker of fear giving way to the quiet courage she'd glimpsed in the bar's frozen moment. Promise? She asked, her voice small but firm, echoing the oaths that had carried him this far. Cross my heart, Ash replied, tapping the spot over his chest, the words sealing another layer to the vow etched in his skin. She nodded, hugging the stuffed raven closer as Hale gathered his keys. The jangle, a prelude to motion. Elena scooped her up, the pair vanishing into Hale's office for safety, while Ash joined Jax outside. The brothers fired up select engines, a subdued roar masking their split, decoys peeling off toward the hills, drawing the shadows away. As Ash mounted his bike, the night air crisp with impending action, Hale's voice followed him out. I've got a line to a federal task force, clean off the books. By dawn, this hits their desks. Reyes's house of cards starts folding. The garage door ground shut behind them, a final barrier against the encroaching dark. Ash revved his throttle, the vibrations surging through him like renewed purpose. The convoy fragmenting into the gloom, half diversion, half deliverance. Miles unspooled under the stars, the pursuing lights fading in the mirrors as the decoys wove their spell. But Ash's thoughts lingered on Mia's question, a child's unyielding demand for truth amid the storm. The road curved toward a horizon tinged with false dawn, carrying them closer to the network's unraveling, not through fury, but the persistent grind of honor's wheel. Elena's testimony, Hale's channels, the club's shield, pieces aligning in a mosaic of redemption where lost promises found their echo in the quiet strength of those who chose to stand. Yet the tale's persistence whispered of deeper resistance, Reyes's influence coiling tighter, setting the stage for a final moral clash where family, blood and forged, would claim its due under the rising light. The first hints of dawn bled across the eastern sky, turning the horizon into a bruised canvas of purple and gold as Ash's Harley cut through the pre-dawn chill. The engine's rumble vibrated through his bones, a steady anchor amid the blur of scrub and shadow, the wind slicing past with the crisp bite of pine from the encroaching foothills. Behind him, the decoy bikes fanned out, their taillights weaving like fireflies in the gloom, drawing the unmarked sedans into a futile chase through winding back roads. Jax's voice crackled over the earpiece, low and assured. "Tails hooked, looping 'em south. You're clear." Ash nodded to the empty air, easing off the throttle as the garage's faint glow reappeared, a sanctuary in the fading night. He rolled into the lot, killing the engine with a soft cough, the sudden silence amplifying the night's subtle symphony, the rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze, the distant call of an owl bidding farewell to the dark. Hale waited at the bay door, arms crossed over his grease-streaked shirt, his mustache twitching with the ghost of a smile. Inside, the fluorescent hum greeted him like an old ally, casting stark relief on Elena and Mia huddled in the office corner. Mia stirred from a light doze on Elena's lap, her curls tousled, eyes blinking open to the safe harbor of familiar faces. "Did we win?" she murmured, clutching the stuffed raven, her voice threading innocence through the tension. Ash knelt beside them, the concrete's chill seeping through his jeans, his tattoo a shadowed vow under the sleeve. "One step closer, kid. The bad dreams are losing ground." Elena met his gaze, her expression a mosaic of exhaustion and emerging resolve, the floral dress rumpled but her posture unbowed. Hale clapped a hand on Ash's shoulder, the grip firm as rusted iron. "Files are airborne. Encrypted burst to my Fed contact in Denver. Task force is clean. No local bleed. By noon, warrants hit Reyes' door and the web starts fraying from the top." The group settled around the workbench, steam rising from mugs of black coffee that carried the bitter earthiness of roadside diners, a ritual to steady nerves before the final push. Hale's laptop screen flickered with confirmation pings, acknowledgements from unseen allies, the digital handoff, a quiet revolution against the corruption that had festered unchecked. Ash traced the table's scars with a calloused finger, his mind replaying the miles, from the bar's frozen silence to Harlan's cracked confession, each turn a testament to promises that outlasted betrayal. "What now?" Eleanor asked, her voice soft but edged with the weight of choices. Mia's head resting against her side like a compass, pointing true. "Wait and watch," Hale replied, pulling up a secure feed from a discreet camera network he'd rigged over the years, eyes on Eldridge's underbelly. The screen split into views, Reyes's opulent ranch house stirring with early light, patrol cars idling nervously at checkpoints, whispers of panic rippling through the network's fringes. As the sun crested, the first crack showed, a sheriff's deputy peeling away from a post, tires spitting gravel in haste, a lawyer's office swarming with suits clutching briefcases like shields. By mid-morning, federal vans rolled in silent formation, badges flashing under the relentless sky, Reyes himself led out in cuffs, his face a mask of calculated outrage crumbling under the flood of evidence. Ash's radio buzzed with Jax's update. The decoys had shaken the tail, the club regrouping at a neutral waypoint, their loyalty a web stronger than the one they dismantled. The Ravens had chosen this path not for glory, but for the quiet honor of standing where others faltered. Vets, widows, lost souls bound by scars deeper than ink. Elena watched the feed, tears tracing silent paths down her cheeks, not just for the fallen empire of lies, but for the life she'd unwittingly anchored in its shadow. "I thought I was saving her," she whispered, stroking Mia's hair, the admission a bridge toward forgiveness, her own redemption blooming in the admission's light. Mia shifted, her small hand finding Ash's, the touch electric, pulling him from the screen's cold justice to the warmth of what remained. "Is it over? Can we go home now?" Her question hung, simple yet profound, echoing the core of their journey, the reclaiming of roots twisted by greed. Ash squeezed her fingers gently, the resemblance in her dimpled smile a confirmation no ledger could match. A quiet clinic visit earlier, under Hale's discreet arrangements, had sealed it, DNA whispers aligning with the tattoo's eternal gaze. Sophia returned not in thunder, but in the steady rhythm of a heart long divided. The afternoon unfolded in measured steps, the convoy reassembling under a sky washed clean by high clouds. They rode toward a sunlit valley, the desert giving way to rolling hills, dotted with wild grasses swaying like whispered oaths. Ash carried Mia on his bike for the first time, her arms around his waist, the wind carrying her giggles like sparks of dawn. Elena rode beside them, her rig steady, the three forming a triad forged in trial, blood rediscovered, family chosen, bonds tempered by truth's unyielding fire. The steel ravens flanked them, engines harmonizing in a protective chorus, Jax at the lead, with a nod that spoke volumes. Brothers in the ride, guardians of the word given. At journey's end, a modest cabin nestled by a creek, the club's hidden retreat, where wounds could heal without the world's glare. The air hummed with the murmur of water over stones, scented with pine and fresh earth, a balm to souls, road-worn. Ash dismounted, lifting Mia down, her feet touching ground as if claiming it anew. Eleanor joined them on the porch, the wood creaking under shared weight, the horizon stretching endless and forgiving. "We're here," Ash said, his voice rough with emotion, the tattoo on his arm catching the light, a portrait no longer of loss, but of reunion's quiet triumph. Mia looked up, her eyes bright with the clarity of youth unscarred. "You're my dad, right? The one with the picture?" Ash knelt, pulling her into an embrace that bridged 20 stolen years, Elena's arms enveloping them both, tears mingling with laughter in the sun's warm embrace. The network's fall rippled outward, headlines of raids and rescues, authorities scrambling to atone for blind eyes turned. But here, in this chosen haven, justice bloomed personal, a father's vow fulfilled, a mother's love unyielding, a child's world whole. As dusk painted the valley in soft ambers, the ravens gathered around a crackling fire, stories shared like embers passed hand to hand, their laughter a defiance of shadows past. Ash watched Mia chase fireflies with the brothers, her joy a legacy of honor's persistence, the pain of old scars softened by the mending. The road had tested every promise, every loyalty, proving that in a world of broken oaths, the chosen family endured, silent, steadfast, a beacon against the night. Thank you for riding this road with us. If stories of redemption, honor, and the unbreakable bonds of family touch your heart, please subscribe for more tales from the shadows into the light. Your support keeps these journeys alive.